The church can play an essential role in supporting newlyweds, providing a foundation of spiritual guidance, practical resources, and community support as they begin this new journey. This social support is crucial for helping newlyweds manage early challenges and joys of marriage, ensuring that they have the resources and community to thrive together. Marriage is the foundation of family. One main challenge is for this new unit, for husband and wife to adjust to their new roles as married individuals, moving away from their formal single self. Marriage in God's design does not take away from one another, but enhances one another. So, why should the church care about this new union? The church values marriage highly and views it as a sacred institution that mirrors the covenant between Christ and the church, described in Ephesians 5:25 through 32. It says, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in all of her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his own wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I am speaking with reference to Christ in the church. Marital conflict can be traced back to the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, and throughout Scripture. Look at Sarah and Abraham. Marital conflict has been a consistent aspect of human relationships throughout history. In modern society, marital conflict is underscored by high rates of divorce, infidelity, and domestic violence. However, there is a difference between conditional relationships that are less stable than covenant relationships. Christians whose marriage is a covenant between one another and God with grace and empowerment and intimacies, marriage will deepen. Balswick, 2021. So, when looking at a new marriage, what are the primary issues people face in this life stage? Realignment with other relationships. You have to adjust from your relationships with your friends, your extended family. What do these things look like now? Different family origins affecting role models, support, and culture. People grow up in different homes with different experiences, and so these look different. How do we adjust to that? The differences between the individuals. Marriage expectations and role conflicts. What does each one of them think a marriage should be like, and what do they think that the roles of they should have and the roles that their spouse should have? Finances. A lot of times when people are newly married, finances can become a heavy burden and cause stress. And unhealthy individually. If you're unhealthy individually, it's going to be hard to connect with another person and have a healthy marriage. So, when looking at the realignment of relationships, what does that look like? I love this. It said Adam and Eve were the happiest and the luckiest couple in the world because neither of them had a mother in law. But in all seriousness, though marriage is a beautiful covenant, it can put strain on many relationships. Family dynamics change, priorities shift. Genesis 2:24 states that a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This can be a hard transition for some. According to Balswick, if the individual comes from a cut-off family or an overly connected family, it becomes difficult to establish a meaningful one-flesh union. However, the influence of one's family remains important because it shapes who they are as individuals. Understanding and managing these strong influences are crucial for building a strong and healthy marriage. But this does not mean that they don't need their family. In the Jewish tradition, when a couple becomes engaged, the groom would actually return to his father's house and prepare a living space for his future wife. This preparation period served multiple purposes. It was a time for the groom to prove his ability to provide for his family. It was also a period which during the marital contract was finalized. The new living quarters would typically be an addition or an extension to the family's existing home. This arrangement allowed the newlyweds to live independently while still being close enough to benefit from family support and guidance. Interestingly, we see this concept in John 14:2-4. Jesus uses this imagery familiar to Jewish weddings to, when he says, in my Father's house there are many rooms. I am going there to prepare a place for you. This was understood by his followers within the context of a bridegroom preparing a home for his bride, symbolizing Jesus preparing a place in heaven for his followers. Parents of this new family plays a role also as role models. For example, some children learn how to manage conflicts in a very unhealthy way from their parents, such as aggression, hostility, avoidance, inconsistency, and lack of resolution. The church can significantly contribute to the health and stability of marriages and family within its community through spiritual and moral guidance, practical tools such as conflict management, emotional intelligence, also providing a space to encounter God for transformation, and having strong role models within the church that can live it out. As a church, we can teach people healthy ways to problem solve, show support and empathy to one another, have effective communication, and show each other affection. As a new couple steps into a marriage, they can continue to grow closer to God and one another with the support of the church. When we look at it in this diagram, we see that a covenant is an unconditional commitment. Grace is unconditional love. Empowering is active and intentional process to enable others. And then we need a level of intimacy. The opposite from intimacy is distance, which causes us to withdraw and even hide ourselves. Shame is born out of the fear of being known intimately. And when shame is present, we put on masks and we begin to play deceptive roles before each other, which would cause a very unhealthy marriage. According to Boswick, 2016, when we become stagnant, it becomes a contract rather than covenant, law rather than grace, possessive power rather than empowering, and distance rather than intimacy. When we are in a marriage, we want to step towards one another. Trent shares that the Hebrew word for life carries the ideal of movement. Things that are moving are alive. In a marriage, we should be choosing to step towards God and step towards one another. But what about some of the differences? The things that we once loved about one another annoy each other. When we have a problem with the way another person is wired, our problem is not with them, but rather with the God who designed them and created them. Paul David Tripp. Marriage is hard sometimes. Living with others and adjusting to one another can be hard. Complex emotions can emerge when one partner excels in an area and the other one feels inadequate, leading to feelings of irritation in response to a partner's strengths. Elliott 2023 suggests adopting a mindset of curiosity and rethinking negative perceptions, shifting focus towards appreciating the partner's strengths and positive impacts that they bring to the relationship. We should value each other's unique abilities. In scripture, we hear that two become one, but I love the way that Baldwick explained it. In a marriage, we become one, but God's intent was not for either one of us to lose our identity. So if we want to make a relationship work, we need to be a student of one another. We should not hide our differences. We should embrace each other's differences, and we should celebrate the differences in our marriages. One of the big problems that people have in a marriage is the marriage expectations. We have this mindset that when we get married, everything's going to be perfect and that person is going to make us happy. That's unfair to put on somebody else. Our spouse cannot fulfill every need that we have. And we need to live in a marriage where we're willing to have mutual sacrifice for one another, where we encourage one another, and that we support one another. Another big issue in marriages is role conflict. Who's going to do what? What are the expectations from the extended family? Did they grow up in a family where the mom stayed home and took care of the kids and cleaned the house and dad went to work? Or did both parents work? Whose job is it to mow the grass? Whose job is it to clean up the house? And a lot of times they have expectations that come into their marriage. And so they're trying to figure out one another. But if we understand these challenges as we step into a marriage, we can work through it and strengthen one another. Budgeting. Another area that can cause relationship problems in a newly marriage is finances. I believe that the church can come alongside these couples and help them learn how to do budgets together and finances together and discuss where their priorities are and what they want. Maybe attend a class like a financial peace through Dave Ramsey. Baldwick shares these fundamental elements for a healthy marriage: unconditional love, Christ-centeredness, acceptance, forgiving, building up one another, reliability, experiencing your feelings, open and honest communication. When working with newlyweds, another element that we could share is the blessing. The concept introduced by Trent emphasizes various ways to strengthen a marital relationship through meaningful interactions and gestures. These can promote healthier and more fulfilling marriages. They are appropriate, meaningful touch, spoken or written message, attaching high value, a picture of a special future, and an active, genuine commitment. The church can come alongside couples and support them in many ways. However, the church is not equipped to handle everything. If the individuals are not mentally healthy, it would be hard to maintain a strong marriage. Unless the church is equipped, they should refer people to counseling for past trauma, mental illnesses, abuse, and addiction. If these areas are not addressed, it is impossible to have a healthy marriage.